As you watch the screen, your heart begins to beat faster. There's a fluttering in the pit of your stomach. Your throat is dry. Your palms damp. Suddenly a chill runs down your spine. You clutch the person next to you. You tell yourself, it's only a movie. It's only a movie. But sooner or later, it's time to go home.
Welcome to Film Street. I'm Jay.
And I'm Brian.
And this is our review of A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, starring Robert Englund, Lisa Wilcox, Whit Hertford, Kelly Jo Minter, Danny Hassel, Erica Anderson, Joe Seeley, Beatrice Bolton. Directed by Stephen Hopkins, no, not the singer from Third Eye Blind. Released in 1989 on a budget of $6 million. It grossed $22.1 million at the box office. Now, we talked about before that some of these are new to us as we're doing these reviews, or that are newer to us. I had almost no memory of A Nightmare on Elm Street 5 at all. Like I've only seen it a few times.
That's a few times more than me. And I've seen it once.
Yeah, but I do know this one carries this. I don't know if I'd call it distinction, or there's part of the fan community that really doesn't go for this one. And I don't know that I've ever completely understood that. And maybe being a little disconnected from the series and having not seen this a million times or whatever, I don't feel the animosity for it that maybe some of the fan base does. But I got to tell you, artistically, this one is a very different motif than I think we've dealt with before. There's a different look to this. Stephen Hopkins is going for a different look with his Freddy film.
It's definitely more polished, I would say, than the previous versions. A lot better graphical animation and everything like that. What was the year? This was 19...
This is 89. So, I mean...
Okay, so computers are getting a little more advanced now, so maybe that's helping in the production? I don't know.
It could be. I mean, I do think that the effects are dated. They are dated for the time.
Sure.
They are very 80s. But I don't think that takes away from the film. I'll say now from the top, that doesn't take away from the film for me. I actually kind of enjoy some of it. I think it looks more creative and neater than the last one in particular.
And I think the concept is very interesting as well.
I agree with you there. This one is really trying to do something and take this in a different way. Now, they won't follow it. We'll go ahead and say now, Part 6 just sort of dumps all this, which, we can talk about whether or not that's a good idea or not when we get there. But, this is continuing on the Part 3 line and Part 4 line, particularly the Part 4 line with the Alice character. We're kind of carrying through. And we talked about before that's one of the things about the Nightmare on Elm Street films that I always thought was interesting is it really did keep a pretty tight continuity between the films. They really were trying to string a story along for a good bit.
Yeah, and that's what I think is great about it, too. I mean, 1, 3, 4, and 5 are in sequential order, right? 2 is supposed to be, but it kind of falls short of that, especially when nothing from the story really comes back. So I think they tried to go a different route and maybe realized that they should keep the story as it was going. And with 3, they came back to it. 4, they advanced it. And 5, they continued that advancement of it. And then we'll talk about 6 when we get to 6. But at least till now, we are in the same story arc, which is nice.
It is. But now, just in historical reference, this did not do well in theaters, and it was a wide release. I mean, it fell behind like The Abyss and Parenthood and other films, and it really dropped as it went through. And a lot of it can be blamed on the fact that this movie is cut to hell by the MPAA. There is so much of this that exists only in like extra footage and poorly developed footage and things like that. Like there's so much of this film that is just chopped to pieces. I mean, it's got a pretty lean running time anyway at 90 minutes, but it could have been an hour and 45. Like, they really cut the effects. So this is the 1988, 1989, 1990 are notorious years in horror with the MPAA when they were just scissor chopping everything. I mean, you can feel it. And I was going to ask you, did you sort of sense that this one felt a little cut up?
I can honestly say no. I didn't really notice it, to be honest. I thought it was fine. Like I said, I've only seen this one other time before, so going in, I had totally forgotten what the whole concept of the story was, and I just watched it, and to me, I guess I just didn't notice that.
I think because I've seen it before, and I've also heard that, and having heard that and sort of knowing what was going on with horror movies at the time, it's hard to watch this and not feel it or whatever.
Yeah, you're probably looking for it, too.
I am, yeah. But I will say, too, I agree with you, and I'm glad to hear you say it, that I don't think it takes away entirely from the pacing. There's a couple spots where I think it sort of jumps a little bit, but for the most part, the through line is still there. And it's a pretty... deep through line. I mean, we'll get into it, but there's some neat stuff going on here and some pretty dark stuff too.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the concept is actually pretty interesting and good. And we'll talk about what you think the whole idea is between what I think the whole idea is. But I like the idea. Maybe it didn't play out the best way it could, but it wasn't terrible.
No, and we'll get into that, and let's waste no more time. Brian, why don't you hit us up with a plot summary? Tell us what happens in The Dream Child.
Alice and Dan are planning a life together as graduation approaches, and things turn when their friends start dying in mysterious ways. Alice learns she is pregnant, and that Freddy is using her unborn child's dreams as a way of gaining power. After Dan and several others are killed, Alice, aided by her friend Yvonne, and the spirit of Amanda Kruger does battle with Freddy once again. Amanda guides Jacob, Alice's unborn son, who has form in the dream world, to turn on Freddy, which allows Amanda to seal him in the dream world and lets our heroes escape. We see months later Alice and Yvonne playing with her son in a park while the familiar rhyme about Freddy is repeated by some girls jumping rope nearby, leaving us to wonder, did they escape or did Freddy prevail? That's an interesting plot summary, Jay, because I think that the line that really catches my attention here is Amanda traps Freddy once again in the dream world. So, based on that line, are we to believe that he's escaped the dream world and come into reality?
Well, I think the bigger through line is the pregnancy idea. And the whole thing is he's using the unborn child's dreams as a way of gaining power. And we're going to talk about that. Now, I'm going to rely on your experience. I, as of yet, still have 0 children to tell them to get off the lawn that I don't own. But you have 3. All right? So you've been through this miracle of life 3 times. Is it true that unborn children can dream? Do, like, your doctors tell you and your wife that?
Yeah, they actually do tell you that. And they can, I think through studies, they see like the different types of sleep and dreams. You can see that through ultrasounds and different patterns that they use. So yeah, I think it is true that they do dream.
That is really cool. And I've heard that before, but I wanted to verify it from a bona fide parent for sure.
What they dream about? That's a good question.
Well, yeah, hopefully not this, right? But
they don't know this. There's no concept for them in that.
Right. But I do like the concept. You talk about what is this movie about? I'll go ahead and tell you what I think this movie's about. I think it's a big metaphor for teenage pregnancy and should I keep it or should I not? I really think that's the whole thing here, because we'll get an extended back scene of Freddy's creation, if you will, when Amanda Kruger is attacked, and we'll, all of what she went through, and then we'll see Alice sort of struggle with this, and Dan will get killed, and all these other things are going. And I really think that's what this movie was sort of using as its through line. And I also will say that may be why it didn't really hit at the box office. I mean, you want to scare teenagers, throw them in the woods and have somebody chase them to kill them. That's fine. You really want to scare them, like scare them straight, start talking about teenage pregnancy. That's a way to get people to go like, no thanks. I
Good call.
I could see in 1989, like my brother's friends, like his generation. That's when he was a senior in high school. I remember those people. I could see some of them going like, "Nah, this is hitting a little too close to home. I'm walking out."
Yeah, I mean, if that was the case, they did it very subtly because I didn't pick up on that at all, and they didn't really spell it out one way or the other. But I can see now, looking back, how you could come to that kind of a thought.
Well, I mean, it's there. I mean, the opening scene is this extended, oddly shot love scene between Alice and Dan. I mean, getting it on here, right?
Odd, yeah.
Yeah, and then she
Terribly
has
shot.
Yeah, it's the worst shot thing in a very interesting and artistically shot movie. But then she has this really cool nightmare in the shower. And I really like that. I mean, every one of these movies opens in a nightmare, in some way, right? So
Not everyone, but most of them.
Well, yeah, most of them have so far, right? Like we've talked about that. The better ones tend to go with that. That seems to be a common thing, that they'll get to a nightmare pretty quick. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that she's either having a nightmare remembering the sex she had, or she has the sex and then she's so exhausted from it because it was so awesome, apparently. She falls asleep in the shower, which I thought was a male problem, to sleep after sex. She falls asleep in the shower and she has this extended nightmare, and we get a glimpse of how Amanda Kruger was assaulted all those years ago in the asylum. And man, that asylum changed motif a little bit, didn't it?
A little bit, maybe.
It's a little gothic.
It became a little bit more medieval, yeah, a little castle-y looking instead of a institutional looking thing, most definitely. And I mean, are we to believe now that this is back in like the 1500s?
I lay all of that off on the fancifulness of dreams and how dreamscapes often will and they over exaggerate what is very real, and sometimes I can think sometimes of things that I dream about that are based on memories of places I've been, and like the it doesn't look exactly right, but it's close enough, know, and so I could see it, and I do think that with a lot of the dreamscapes and the way that the nightmares go and the kills and everything, it's a very gothic horror look this time. I mean, it looks like we're doing battle in Frankenstein and Dracula land.
Well, and you've got a lot of that kind of scenery that we're using in this movie, and they kind of carried that over a little bit from the previous film where she was in kind of the church type setting to this, so I guess they kind of tried to keep a little bit of the theme going, but I think they did go a little overboard.
I feel like they're going like medieval Catholic look here. They sort of played with that anyway, and I feel like I haven't seen a lot of old cathedrals and things, particularly like in the Northeast. I feel like some of this is shot in some of those. It's just these big tall ceilings and this stained glass and all these stone walls that look like they could either be a church or a prison, depending on how the light was done that day.
Or both.
Yeah, exactly, right? So, or metaphorically, they could be one and the same, because that's how some people would pursue it.
Hey, now.
Well, no, I'm just saying.
That far.
I think this movie's a lot smarter than people give it credit for, man. I really do. I think this thing is delving into a lot of stuff because we don't waste a ton of time figuring out she's pregnant. I mean, that happens kind of at the one act turn. That's where that comes around. But when they spring it, it's not this huge surprise. It's actually like, yeah, that's kind of what happens when you have a lot of sex with your boyfriend. But let's talk about Alice for a minute. Talk about a different person than we talked about the end of the last movie. She looked like she got her hair did and she was, confident and stuff now. I mean, she's like a totally different character this time around. Same actress, but totally different portrayal.
Well, you got to think that she feels like she's defeated this whole thing, right? She hasn't had a nightmare since then, correct? I mean, we're to believe that. And then, things are going pretty good for her. She's got new friends. She's got Dan. They're planning life after graduation. All this stuff is going on. They're having hot sex. I mean, she's a little different than she was. Before she was kind of shy.
She was that dowdy girl that just sort of was the wallflower, right?
Yeah, and Daddy was kind of a dick and really kind of made her one of those people who just doesn't communicate well, right?
Right, and he's no longer a drunk. Like, he's got his crap together, and I mean,
everyone dies in your family, I think it helps.
It tends to make it. But she's got like a totally new set of friends, of course, because we always do that in these horror movies. A year later, and everybody's got brand new friends. But it's a high school.
It makes sense.
Yeah,
you would get new friends if all yours died too. I would hope. Unless they're afraid to be friends with you.
I don't know. I don't want to test that theory. So let me just say that. So yeah, but no, I mean, those are some of the same tropes of the film. But I like Alice here. I mean, I really do like it, and I got this sense too that she had defeated Freddy to a point where he could no longer attack her in dreams or any of the other teenagers. Right? Like he's done with the Elm Street teenagers at this point. He's trying to attack other people, and he doesn't have any power left. And so the only way he can attack is to try to go through the innocence of the baby. What we'll find out. I thought that was a neat twist, is that his only way in is against someone who's defenseless against it. Because like you said, babies don't know what they're dreaming about. They're just dreaming. So he can use that as sort of a doorway back and forth. I thought that was smart.
Yeah, I think that's smart too. It's a neat concept and an interesting way to weave him back in. I'm kind of curious as to why they chose that instead of going back to her dreams. I mean, does that just then further the fact that whatever she did with the mirror caused him to not be able to go after her now, and then this is his way back in? Is that what we're to believe, do you think?
I took it as that. I took it as whatever she did last time, as cheesy as, and it was cheesy, that ending rhyme thing, whatever she did was enough to knock him so far back in a way that he could no longer reach her or her friends and attack them. Because again, remember, he doesn't have any connection to these people anymore other than he's done battle against her. Like, she's not an Elm Street kid, right? Because the last of them is gone now, because that was Kristen. So he doesn't have like this. His personal vendetta against her is that you beat me and now you're my new enemy. So it's a different connection. So like I'm saying, he doesn't have this. Well, I'm going to get to you because I'm imbued with all this demonic power because your parents killed me or whatever. He didn't have that MO anymore. So now it's, well, how am I going to get back to this bitch is pretty much Freddy's thing, right? Yeah. And his way back is, oh, you're pregnant? Oh, there's my opening. And I mean, we get it in those strange dreams. I mean, we get the jump rope kids again, which is used really good in this movie. I like that they brought that back. I felt like that was kind of missing sometimes, but they brought that back, and then we get the nun in front of the Gothic castle. And
I think it was their last film too.
I don't remember. Was it in the fourth one?
I think so. I think it was towards the beginning.
Okay, maybe it was. Maybe I'm just not remembering.
I think they've had it in every single one. I'm pretty sure.
It is a good through line. It's maybe the biggest through line next to Freddy's glove through the film with the darn jump rope girls. But we get that weird baby carriage thing, and then we get the Amanda nightmare at birth. Where she's giving birth and she's got like that priest doctor like screaming at her. I'm like, that is not helping the situation. So I'm like, no, I don't know. Definitely. I don't know if you've been in the room or not. Well, I'm pretty sure nobody's screaming at your wife.
No, but let's think of it this way, right? I mean, she's a nun, number one. She's in a seminary mental hospital of some sort, and your doctor's a priest. So I'm going to go at the Catholic thing back in those days as being really pissed off at your nun for getting pregnant.
Hey, not her fault. They locked her up.
Just saying.
They locked her up with 100 maniacs, and then they're pissed at her that she got pregnant? Bro, holy cow, man.
Well, I'm just saying. That's what I'm thinking.
You know what? You're probably not wrong. Maybe that's what they're going for. I was like, hey, that guy's a dick. I'm like, well, I probably shouldn't say that about a priest, but wow.
I mean, you could say that about a lot of them, I'm sure.
Not true. The alien, the Freddy baby attacks, though, in the dream. This is the thing. It reminded me so much of like the xenomorph from Alien. If you've ever seen that, like the way that the little alien that pops out of the guy and runs around and does stuff, it sort of works the same way. I'm like, well, we're borrowing from other movies that have been around. Like Aliens had been out 3 years before this, but was a huge hit. I mean, it influenced so many other things. So I could see they played around with some of that stuff. I got a little alien off of the Freddy baby in the dream.
And I don't disagree. I mean, it's kind of a ripoff from there, the way it happens. But as far as the whole thing goes, I thought the scene was interesting, especially since they had Robert Englund involved in the rape part of everything, and kind of it was almost like Freddy was watching the whole time. I think we're supposed to believe that was Freddy's father, and because he was really watching the chaos go on and kind of staying back and then attacks type thing.
Right.
So I think that's what we're supposed to believe. I don't know that we're meant to think that he's leading the baby to see this. He could have been. I don't know.
It's interesting because, I mean, Alice walks eventually in one of these dreams, walks back into the church where she beat Freddy last time, right? Mm-hmm. And the alien puppet thing crawls into Freddy's clothes that were left on the floor there, and this is how he resurrects. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't remember it. I thought, ooh, Alice is going to get it right here. Like, they're going to kill her right now. We're going to do that again where we kill the main character like in part 3 now, and then we're going to have somebody else that we go through. And I really thought she was going to get it.
I didn't per se. I thought it was a really weird way to bring him back, having this little, like, it was almost like a glob of goo going on the ground, worm type thing, and then just turning into Freddy. It was a little bit of a neat effect, to be honest. I thought it was weird, but kind of neat. So I didn't think she was going to get it, I don't think, at the time I was watching it. I was just kind of like, wow, this is how she knows he's back.
I do think it's weird. It's a strange effect to watch the Freddy goo baby turn into Big Freddy. But I mean, we've resurrected him. I mean, it's better than a dog pissing fire. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
You know, I thought that was kind of, last time. So I'm fine with this. I think it's cool. I like the fact though that when Freddy comes back, he brings Amanda Kruger back with him. Like, that's something that's hanging on. And I like the idea that if you have this ultimate evil thing that'll resurrect itself, that just in basic terms of balance in anything, nature, physics, whatever you want to call it, there's always an opposite and equal reaction, right? And the idea is that, well, if the evil thing comes back, then you've got to have the counteracted good come back with it, too. And I don't know, I thought that was pretty cool. I liked the way that, yeah, he can come back, but he brings back his mom with him. So he brings mom baggage with him, pretty much.
Yeah, and I don't know that she ever left, right? She was in the last film. She wasn't brought back by Freddy then. She wasn't really vanished either. She kind of told them that he had to be buried in hell, or 2 films ago, I should say, in hallowed ground, right?
Right.
And now he's been removed from there, and he's coming back again. Maybe she says, well, the only thing that can take care of him is me.
Right.
Which is basically what she spells out.
And she's the one that says that, she's got to be released from her earthly prison now. Like,
right, because she's trapped in her hell, so they got to find her, right.
Exactly, which I think is a good twist on the part 3, is that now we have to find her. Like, her spirit's around, but she can't really be of good use until they can free her. And I don't know, I got this throwback, Brian. Maybe it's because I've been playing ancient video games recently or something, but I felt like I was in, like, Castlevania on the old NES system or something. Or, like, I got to go find the good witch and release.
Right.
I feel like I was on one of those quests. But you know what? At the time, in, like, 1989, that would have totally been something that everybody watching this would have related to. So if they're cribbing from that, sure, I'm down. I think it's cool. I think you give your people a quest because, the thing is, none of these people have to figure out who the hell Freddy is. Like, we've done that. They don't have to go, well, why is he trying to kill us again? No, we're pretty sure we know why now, right? So we're not wasting time on that anymore. So we got to give them something to do besides stand around to be killed. Because there are a lot of these people who are pretty much here just to get killed. And I mean, like Greta, Mark, Dan, all these people are here to get slaughtered at some point or another. And I'm just sitting there like, who's going to get it first? Like, that's the thing I'm waiting on.
Well, you don't have to wait too long, Jay, because we're just about to get to that fun part.
Exactly, right. So we still got this pool party going. This is the thing, like, Yvonne has graduated, but yet she's still, like, practicing like she's got swim tryouts the next week. And I'm like, what, are you going to college on a scholarship? Like, that's never set up at all. Like, I'm like, why would you still be practicing? It doesn't, I don't know. But we get the thing, like, we think how Freddy's going to get all of them. I'm like, okay, she's going to get it in a pool. Greta is this model wannabe, so maybe a camera will kill her. I don't know. Mark is into weird nerd stuff, so clearly that's going to be how he gets it, right? And Dan, though, I did not think Dan would be the one to go this fast. I thought Dan would hang around as useless and hunky as he was. That's kind of all he was there for, was to look good and then impregnate Alice. And now, like, he gets a call from her to go to her, and I got to tell you, I love the twofold death that Dan gets here. The fact that Freddy attacks, takes control of the truck, causes it to wreck, and then Dan gets on the motorcycle that Freddy possesses and turns into like this, I don't know, hell cycle or something out of Ghost Rider. I mean, it was a crazy looking effect.
Did he get killed in the truck wreck, or was he then dreaming this piece afterwards?
He gets killed in the truck wreck because he's on the ground in the truck when another car comes by and smashes it.
Got it.
Yeah, because he's so distracted by the dream thing, thinking that's how he's going to go down.
Got it.
The weirdest part of it, though, is that like the score for some reason turns into circus music. And I'm like, I don't really get the circus touch there. It was really strange, but the wreck and the whole effect with Dan and stuff is just really impressive, I think. It's some of the best looking effects in the film.
Yeah, they do a good job, I think, compared to some of the other films with the deaths in this one. Some of them are really cheesy. I mean, if we look back at the one where the girl becomes like a locust.
Yeah, the one, the Roach Motel last time.
Oh, God, that was just terrible. And yeah, so, I mean, they're advancing, so this is a good thing. And they kind of have to, because you can only do stupid, cheesy ones for so long. So it's nice to see kind of a better use of time. I didn't like the one from the last one where she kind of got her breath sucked out of her and shriveled up into like a raisin.
I know, yeah, like at least they didn't do anything like that.
Yeah, so this one is a little better. I mean, the car accident makes sense. The motorcycle thing is a little odd. But overall, Dan's gone. I mean, he's the first one to die.
And the
most important one, right?
Right, and the whole aftermath of it is Alice seeing what happens, because basically the wreck and the explosion happened like right near where she is, and she just passes out and wakes up in the hospital, and that's where she learns she's pregnant. So, like, talk about a bad 12 hours. Your boyfriend, who you're making plans with, gets killed in a wreck. It's so strange, and you find out you're pregnant, and you've been having weird dreams about Freddy again. Stuff's going down. Like Alice has had
for it, yeah.
Yeah, Alice is having a bad day.
And I mean, like you said, he's coming to get her, right? And he almost makes it and then dies right there. So very not fun end.
Right. So,
but yeah, we're in the hospital, and she does learn finally that she is pregnant with her now dead boyfriend's baby.
Right. And then she has a dream, and she meets the little boy in the dream, and I'm like, they play that off like we're not supposed to know who that is for a while, and I'm like, that's him.
Really? I didn't get that at first at all.
Oh, I was like, that's totally her son. Like, they want you to think, I think that's like baby Freddy, but I'm like,
that's the way I looked at it at first, yeah.
Really? I never have thought that. So that's interesting. Tell me why you thought that.
Well, it didn't make sense any other way to me. I wasn't thinking that we were going to be using the unborn child. I was thinking that based on the flashbacks that we've had and all this going on, that was what it was. The innocent child Freddy before he became a monster.
That's interesting.
So that's how I looked at it.
I've never looked at it that way, but that's a neat perspective, and I can see you seeing that there. Like when I watch this again, I'll try to look at this as like, yeah, could I see that as baby Freddy maybe? And that would have been an interesting choice if they had done that. If they tried to play that or off, that before he was corrupted, this was him, and somehow his younger uncorrupted self. Oh, this starts to get that'll give you a headache, man. You start doing that kind of stuff.
Yeah. No, that's how I thought. I mean, they dispel that fairly quickly. I mean, it's not long before we start to see the pieces fall together that this is Alice's child coming too. But at first, that was the first impression I got, is that we're looking at, based on what we've already seen in the birth of Freddy and all that stuff, we're looking at young Freddy here trying to help her. Maybe help him,
Yeah, what I love is that this is like Elm Street: The Next Generation. Like, none of the friends are buying the Freddy talk. They're like, what? You know, like, they're no Greta, Mark, none of them. They're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, and I'm going like, well, you know, the parents had spent all these years trying to suppress that killing, right? And it makes sense that other people would have no idea what's going on. This Springfield's been set up as this town that really does turn its head the other way from a lot of weird stuff that goes down. So I can buy that there would be a generation of people who have no idea like what you're talking about. You know, like the younger siblings of the Elm Street kids, basically, which is who these people are at this point, and the age group they would be. They're like, they have no idea. Like they're not buying it at all. And I kind of like that though, and I do think that's how Freddy's able to get them, is they don't believe in him, but he can use again the baby Jacob dreaming to get at them, and he's going to start picking them off pretty quick. I mean, he didn't waste a lot of time. He goes right after Greta. Apparently, the one that was cut up the most by the MPAA is she's at a elegant dinner that she's not interested in at all, where she falls asleep, and Freddy like feeds her to death. And in the real world, she chokes to death, but like he feeds her till she explodes. It's really gross and weird.
Yeah, just a little bit. You know, her mom that we've established is kind of a little bit of a bitch.
She's kind of like Kristen's mom a little bit.
She's
sort of like they could have been like friends at the club,
right? And you're gonna eat that? Oh, and then you know they're having all of her fancy hoity-toity friends, and I'm guessing some agents or something there, right?
Supposedly,
try to
that's what
sign
they're
her
saying.
to a deal, and then she's not eating, and so mom's thinking she's being disrespectful, and then all the food goes down her throat, and yeah, it's a bad way to die.
I know, yes, it's a terrible way for her to go, but you know, it is the perfect way, because again, Freddy has done this for years, where he will go after you at the way that makes the most sense to get you.
Correct, and he's always established that, right? I mean, he's always gone after. It's almost like he goes after the 7 deadly sins, right? Your sin is vanity or whatever, so I'm going to use that against you. Your sin is whatever, you know. So that's kind of like that kind of thing. And
I guess her sin though should be like boredom, because I mean, Greta does look immensely bored this entire film for as little as she's in it. Like I don't care anything about this character at all. I don't know why I should. She doesn't really even seem that good of friends with Alice. I mean, she just is kind of there.
True.
I
think she, I don't know if it's boredom. I think she's just PO'd at her mom for making her do all this crap. She's not interested in being this supermodel, right?
She's pre-Varsity Blues. I don't want your life as a model, so I'll choke on food. So I guess that's what happens to her. But she goes. I mean, that's it for her. I will say this: it's better than the bug death from last time, but it is the worst one in this film. I do think this is even if it wasn't cut up, and you can see the uncut version on YouTube if you want. It's just more gory. It's not really that great. I'm like, it's not really one of Freddy's better kills in my opinion.
No, definitely not. But it serves its purpose, because I think it like I said, he feeds off of what they're there for. She's not interested in all this stuff that mommy wants her to do, and so what happens? He stuffs her full of food. Which is probably what she really wanted to do in the first place, was eat more. But then mom would yell at her.
Right, and so that's what gets her. And, of course, she chokes in the real world, like we said, and just falls like flat over on the table. And I'm like, nobody's giving her the Heimlich? Like, you people are useless. You know, like, nobody even tries. I mean, anyway. It's weird, but Alice and Yvonne go to see Mark at his dad's warehouse or whatever, and I love like Mark's world of comic drawings start coming to life when he falls asleep, and I love that world and the way that looks. It's so cool, you know, and I don't know, I really love the aesthetic of that. I mean, I know it's kind of a ripoff of the Aha Take On Me video kind of thing, you know, but I thought it was neat to go into that world, and they'll do it again later too.
I did too. Actually, I really liked it. I like how he made himself a character in his little comic book as he was drawing. I thought it was an interesting character, actually. I think he was the most interesting character that we had. And I was actually surprised that he lasted as long as he did. And I was kind of hoping that maybe he'd have a couple of comic book wins before Freddy took him out.
Right.
You know? Right. Because it was kind of a neat little concept.
It is a cool thing, and I love how he does get out of it. You know, Jacob shows up in the dream world again, and this is how Alice finally figures out that this is her kid that she's dreaming about, which I do love that they don't waste any more time on that. They do reveal that for us, because if people were like you and they're like, is this baby Freddy or whatever, they're going to go ahead and get away from that for us, which is cool, I think. I like this. And by far the smartest thing in the movie here that they lay out after Alice and Yvonne go to the doctor and they're doing the ultrasound and all that stuff, and they find out that unborn baby's dream, and they figure out that's how Freddy's getting to everyone. And what they learn, and this is what's so cool to me, is that Freddy is feeding the unborn boy souls of those that he is killing. And we've talked about before that, like, Freddy feeds off the souls of people, right? So that's how he's making his, I guess, doorway bigger and stronger, is by feeding those souls to this unborn boy. So in other words, in some ways, like, you can look at it, he is corrupting innocence, and that's allowing him to gain power again in the dream world so that he can attack people and kill them in the real world.
Yeah, and I thought it was a neat concept, too. We do get to finally learn the real truth here. And I also like the fact that it's Mark in his comic book that he's pulled out that learns about Amanda and how to kind of defeat Freddy, in a way.
Right. And he's done all this research on Krueger. Yvonne wants none of this stuff, right? And this is getting a lot of interesting conversations here, because Mark starts talking to Alice about, do you really want to have this baby? And that's why I think, you know, this is part of the through line of this movie is about teenage pregnancy. Should I keep it? Should I not? And she's, of course, like, absolutely not hearing any of that. And then, like, Dan's parents are, like, offering to adopt because they think she's completely Looney Tunes.
Dan's parents are threatening
to adopt.
Yeah. To go to court to get the baby. And, yeah, talk about wanting to throat punch people.
Would they even have a case? Like, that would... maybe, I guess.
It depends on what they use for reasons. If they say she's kind of mentally unstable, then they would have a case.
I guess so. I do think it's almost like one set of villains too many. Like, I would have been better with
villains for a very short time, thank God. But
a
rude pair of parents to come in and do something like that. And honestly, I think they could have just foregone that whole thing, because it didn't really do anything to advance the story other than to show that his parents are jackasses.
I completely agree. I would have been much cooler with it if they had come in and been, like, supportive. So then Alice realized, I've got my dad and these people on my side. So she could almost sort of say, I don't have to worry about the real life part of all this, which is big and huge enough as it is, so that I can deal with the Freddy part. It almost feels like we've got too much pressure on poor Alice here. I'm like, girl's got enough problems. Let's not give her these. You know, I'm with you. It was one step too far. So, but Mark figures out the thing about Amanda Krueger that we have not known up to this point. This is really cool. She was never buried, all right? And she committed suicide. Which is, I'm like, okay, now we have just laid another huge trump card on the Catholic evil pile that we've got going on here, shit. Right? I mean, really, like, she's a nun who was knocked up, you know, out of wedlock by a bunch of maniacs, and she killed herself. Mm-hmm. Okay, now the plot has thickened, and for like 2 seconds there, I thought, are they about to spin this where we're going to get a tag team of Freddy and Amanda Krueger are both evil, and they're, you know, she's been playing us all along, and they don't go that way, but for like a second there, I thought, man, they're going to play that, and that would have been cool if they had decided to go that way.
It would have been interesting, and, you know, like you said, this is playing on that whole Catholic trope here. I mean, back in the day, a suicide was looked at as an unforgivable thing, right?
Right, exactly.
And so they wouldn't have buried her in the traditional Catholic or Christian method because it was looked that poorly upon. They would have probably ash heaped her or burned her. Right.
So. And that's what they figured out, is that her soul is trapped wherever she killed herself. And that's what they've got to go and figure out, is where is that? And they figure the only way we can... Yeah, the only way we can find that is Alice has got to find her in the dream world and trace her back down, so then we can go and release her in some way, right? And I do love that Mark is supposed to stay awake and watch Alice as she goes into the dream world or whatever.
Right.
Now
that's always the task, and it never works.
And I know, and it's not going to work here again. And we're gonna put this on the other side of Yvonne is going to decide to go for a swim. As I wrote down in my notes, for reasons I still don't get because you've already graduated. So unless
maybe
you're
she's
going
on the
to
college swim team already,
maybe she's going to Ohio State or something. I don't know, but I love how Freddy comes to attack her, and I think it's a great sequence of her diving off the board into the boiler room. I was like, that looked cool. That was really well done.
That was not bad at all, and very kind of, wow, that would be freaky.
Totally. And he's got her. He's got her dead to rights, and I love how Alice shows up to rescue Yvonne, and she's able to put Freddy at bay for a little bit here. Like, they get a little bit of a battle, but he's still not strong enough to take her out right now.
And I think it's an interesting concept, too, because at this point, Alice has always been able to pull people into her dreams, but now she's pulling herself into someone else's dream?
I guess it goes both ways. The door would swing both ways, right? Yeah. That's what they're saying.
Maybe. Or this is all Alice's dream, and she gets sucked in, Yvonne does, into the dream, and that's how it goes. I don't know exactly, but it seems to me like the other way, that she gets into Yvonne's dream.
I think you're onto something there. Remember, Freddy is getting to these people through what? Alice's unborn child, who's always dreaming, or is dreaming a lot, apparently. I don't know how much babies dream, but this baby apparently dreams a lot. So that's his way in. So Alice has gone into the dream world to look for Amanda Kruger. And because she is in tune with this kid in her, she realizes something's going down. And so she's able to switch, directions and go and find Yvonne. I think that's how she's doing it.
Must be. So, it's kind of neat.
Yeah.
So Yvonne gets saved.
I know, like, she doesn't die. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah. I really thought she was going to get, like, boiled in the, hot tub, or, Freddy was going to drown her some weird way or something. But no. And she lives, like, till the end. I'm like, when does the useless friend number 3 ever survive a horror movie?
Never, until now.
Well, except for Leprechaun, which we don't.
Well, we don't talk about Leprechaun.
Well, we did. We reviewed every damn one of them. So
very well, I might add.
Yes, some of our better episodes. At continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Anyway, so Yvonne and Alice go looking for Amanda. And of course, Mark has done the thing that you're not supposed to do. He's gone to sleep, right? And he's pulled into his comic world, and he takes the form of his created superhero. And I love that for a minute, that like he gets to, be a badass for a minute. And I love the contrast here, the black and white versus the colors and all that. I thought it was cool. Now, there are people on the internet that just freak out over Super Freddy and how cheesy that is or whatever. I actually think it's awesome.
It's a comic book.
Yes, it's exactly what I expect.
Of course he's going to be Super Freddy, for God's sakes. But also, Mark should have superpowers, even though he's wimpy, to defeat Super Freddy, right? You would think, in a comic book world. And I was a little disappointed that it didn't end up that way. I would have loved to have seen this movie delve into that more, where he has to get into the comic multiple times. But, well.
It would have been great. In the real world,
probably cost too much.
I love that Freddy chops him apart and all the color drains out of him. Like, apparently that was supposed to be a lot more graphic in the MPA, cut the crap out of it. In the real world, stuff falls on him and falls on top of him and crushes him.
Right.
Which is kind of not usually what you expect, but I guess how do you kill him off? But it makes sense, but I like it. I thought the whole thing was cool. I mean, I really, again, I could have gone for that sequence again. They had done one battle in the comic world. I could have gone for another one. Like, maybe
bring all
Mark,
3 of them in there.
Yeah, maybe Mark vanquishes him once, and then when he thinks he's got him, he doesn't have him the next time around, and that's when we get Super Freddy. I don't know. But I liked the whole thing there.
I did too. I thought it was well done, and I was hoping for a little bit more of something like that, like I said. But, let's talk a little bit, everything falls on top of him, right? Why? Right. Because it's a big-ass warehouse full of crap.
Yeah, no, it's like his dad's awful warehouse, and they blame it off on his dad, like his dad didn't, follow regulations, and that's all.
Well, obviously, look
killed
at
him. Yeah, and I'm like, well, you're talking about we're going to make the parents feel awful in this movie, so we're just going to go all for that with gusto. But I did like it. I love how Alice's screams though are what wakes Yvonne up in the real world, and she comes to get Alice, to wake her up, and together they figure out we've got to go back to where Amanda Kruger died, and they figure out she died in the tower of that asylum from part 3.
Yes.
You know, and that to me was cool. And the whole bit with Yvonne goes there while Alice distracts Freddy in the dream world, and Freddy gets attacked by all the maniacs that attacked Amanda and torn apart, but it doesn't do him in.
Right. I liked it too. I thought it was very interesting. And I mean, to me, that tower where she was the obvious place where she died, because she's gone to it multiple times in the franchise. So
exactly,
to me, that was the obvious place. It shouldn't have taken too much thought on Yvonne's part. But I like this whole sequence too, and I like the idea of the same people that created Freddy kind of tearing him apart. But again, Freddy doesn't get destroyed by that. We know that Amanda has to be involved in that piece.
Exactly. And the thing is that Freddy has a great out here. He hides inside Alice because he knows her so well. Like, he's been around her so much, he's done so much battle with her. And I mean, that's sort of the side effect of the fact that she's able to go in and out of dreams so much now, that she exposes herself to being susceptible to this. So we get this awesome, like, thing where Freddy is like trying to separate from her, and you get that, like, the two people pulling apart thing, and it looks dated as hell now, no doubt, but I love the idea and the concept, and like all the visuals here are amazing. It's like MC Escher come to life and in hell or something. I mean, it's just it's unbelievable. I really dug this whole throwdown between Alice and Freddy, and Alice forcing Freddy to come out of her.
I liked it too. I mean, but it then it gives you the visual that Freddy is trying to be born again as Jacob, right? Is that how you took it?
Exactly, yeah. That
he's trying to be born in human form again as Jacob. And even though they're kind of playing on the fact that Freddy's trying to turn Jacob into him, I think really what they were meant to do was to say that Freddy becomes Jacob.
Right, I think that's what ultimately he was resigned to do, that he could take form again if he could possess the boy.
Yep, and now she's fighting against it and getting him out of that.
Exactly.
So I liked it too.
But, again, let's go back to my motif here, right? What's been the thing I've said is a big metaphor for this movie is teenage pregnancy and the idea of abortion and things like that. And what Alice does here in the dream world is she essentially decides, I'm aborting the Freddy part of this. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, well, that is twisted and dark, man. I mean, again, this movie is going in some places I didn't expect a Nightmare on Elm Street 5 to go.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely is. And but it's a good visual, and it's a good story arc, because now she's on her side defeated that piece, but it's not quite over yet because he's still got influence on the Jacob Dream character, right?
Exactly, right? And I mean, that's the thing is Amanda is finally freed. Another great visual, by the way, that releases her soul to do battle with Freddy. And she shows up as Freddy and Alice are doing this battle, and she tells Jacob how to defeat him. And I love how he switches. He acts like he chooses Freddy over Alice, but of course it's a ruse. And he unleashes all those souls that Freddy gave him. And what do those souls do? They start tearing Freddy apart.
Yeah.
And yes. And then Amanda catches the Freddy baby thing that tears out of adult Freddy, and she holds onto it, like reabsorbing it into her as Alice absorbs the baby Jacob thing. It's like Alice kicks out the bad part and keeps the good part of her kid. And even though Freddy's trying to escape, it looks like Amanda locks him in the dream tower, right?
Locks him in her dream womb.
Right, the dream womb. That's what they could have called it.
Yeah.
So it's a very visually stunning ending. I mean, I like the battle. I think it's way better than the battle at the end of part 4.
Oh, yeah.
The only thing I have questions about are the end, because we flash ahead to months later, assumingly 9, 10, 12 months later, and Alice, Yvonne, and her dad, and baby Jacob, and not the Jordans, are playing in a park. But in the background, we see and hear the eerie jump rope rhyme and the jump rope girls, and I'm like, so are they still in a dream? What? That's why I wrote that in the plot summary that way. I'm like, so what is the ending of this movie? Because it is incredibly ambiguous.
Yeah, well, obviously, I think that they're in a dream of some sort. But what and when that happens, we don't really know. And they never, unfortunately, come back to it, which is sad. Because I think they could have played off of this and had Jacob grow a little older and have some issues himself now.
I would think so too, but again, maybe this isn't even months later. Maybe the kid hasn't even been born. Maybe this is after Alice wakes up and she has another dream, and now Freddy's still trying to come back at her.
Yep, I'm assuming that the kid hasn't been... my assumption is that the kid hasn't been born. She's dreaming about how they defeated Freddy and how her life is going to be, and then, oops, no, not so much.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, maybe it's too big. But I don't know. It certainly leaves a lot of questions, but I generally liked the ride. I'm curious to see what you're going to say here. We're at the part of the podcast where it's time to give final thoughts, recommendations, and popcorn ratings. So what are yours for A Nightmare on Elm Street 5, The Dream Child, Brian?
Well, I mean, I don't know how to, I'm not listening to anything the internet says or anyone in these forums say. I don't bother looking that up. My point is to watch these movies and rate them on how I watched them, right? And for me, I enjoyed this movie. I thought it was good. The concept was good. There's little execution flaws here and there, obviously, and there are going to be no matter what. But overall, I had a good time with this movie, and so for me, I'm going to give it a large popcorn. I would watch it again.
I think if the last movie was more of an action movie, then this one is like this suspense gothic horror thing going on. And I think it's way smarter than it's ever been given credit for. And if you can sort of put all that to the side, like you say you do, which is great, and just watch it and just kind of go with it, this movie's incredibly smart. It's dark. It's got some good comedy in it too, but it's got a lot of really deep themes and things. People hold up part 3 in this series as if it's this great horror masterpiece. And I'll be honest with you, Brian, for me, this one's just as good. I had as much fun watching this as I did that third one, and way more than I did the last one. And I didn't dislike the last one, but I think this one is head and tails above it. And I'm sad that it didn't resonate and didn't work. I mean, again, 1989 is where slasher movies just fell off the cliff. As we well documented on this show with a lot of different reviews. And this is one of the ones that drove it right off the cliff. And that's unfortunate. But in retrospect now, you look back all these years later, there's a lot in this one that works. And so I'm joining you in that large popcorn, man. I think this is one of the better ones in the series. And I'm glad I got to revisit it. I'll definitely watch it again. I'm really interested to get to next time. Because next time when we're doing Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare, I have distinct memories of this film and the way I felt about it. I haven't watched it in a long time. I'm curious to go back to it and see what they decided to. We're going to abandon all this other stuff to do one last big hoorah and wrap it all up. Which, again, wasn't the entire wrap-up. But it really kind of is, because after next week, we've got Wes Craven's A New Nightmare, and then we got the remake. And then Freddy vs. Jason in there. We don't get another Nightmare film, really, again. The sixth one really is the end of that series. And so I'll be curious to see how they decide to wrap it up and whether or not we think it works.
I'll be curious, too, because I think I've only seen it one time, so I don't remember a whole lot about it. So we'll see.
Definitely will be fun times. Of course, folks, you can find all the reviews of the coming episodes and the past ones on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. You can subscribe to us on iTunes, hook up with us on Facebook and social media, Twitter, such like that, and let us know what you think of the show. And leave us a review, a positive review of the show if you like it on iTunes. It helps other people find the show. We really appreciate your support. I mean, right now, we are in the midst of a huge battle, if you will, on our podcast feed. We've got Freddy versus Jason going every week, man. I mean, it's Nightmare on Elm Street and then Friday the 13th movies, of course, building up to the big one right before Halloween. We'll do Freddy versus Jason. You and Ron and I will work together, but of course, all those again on the main feed. Check us out wherever you download your podcast. We appreciate your support. Until next time, for Brian, I'm Jay. Thanks for listening to Film Strip.
Thank you for listening to Film Strip. You can find more episodes on our website, continuousplaypodcast.com/movies. Please leave us a positive review on iTunes and link up with us on Facebook. The Film Strip theme music is produced and performed by Frozen Lake 121.